My name is Dean Gloster, and I am a bankruptcy attorney. I have represented retirees on various occasions, including the bankruptcy of Delta Airlines and Delphi. I'm going to talk about the pension benefit protections that you have, the health benefit protections that you have, the health coverage tax credit, and I'll speak about the bankruptcy process and getting organized and prepared. So let's talk about the first category, which is pension benefit protection. The good news is, people have been talking about amend, modify, and terminate. For the most part, pension benefits are creatures that they are ERISA protected benefits. Outside of bankruptcy, typically those are contractually and statutorily protected. They are, a pension benefit is typically separately funded, a separate trust or a separate entity. The secured bondholders of Chrysler do not have a security interest in the assets in those pension trusts. They are also, to the extent that they are defined benefit plans, that are qualified plans, they are typically guaranteed by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, or PBGC. And the PBGC actually has a very useful website, www.pbgc.gov. Let's talk about qualified pension plans. And first, I think it's useful to kind of discuss what pension benefits you have at Chrysler. So we've got the Chrysler Pension Plan. That's a defined benefit qualified, guaranteed by the people. There's the Chrysler Salaried Employees Retirement Plan, reported as a defined benefit qualified plan. Then there's the Chrysler Supplemental Executive Retirement Plan, which is a non-qualified plan. So the qualified plan protections, those are separate plans. Funds in those plans are not subject to the claim of Chrysler credit. In addition, they're backed up by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation. The non-qualified plans, those are not backed up by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation. What happens if there's a PBGC takeover? First, understand that there's really only three ways to terminate one of these plans. First, the employer can come forward and say, I'm having a regular plan termination, and in order to do that, they have to pay every benefit and arrange for their asset to pay every benefit. The second is that the employer comes forward with a distress termination and says, look, we're hopelessly insolvent. Typically, we are in bankruptcy. We are seeking court authorization for a distress termination because we can't possibly make our minimum funding obligations. The third way is that PBGC itself steps in and says, look, this underfunded pension plan we see going from bad to worse. More people are going to invest in benefits. The shortfall in funding is simply going to grow and grow and grow. We want it terminated as the PBGC on a distress termination today. The PBGC actually has a lot of discretion in sort of whether they honor the exact original payout terms of the plan or they modify them slightly because there's several different ways they pass out money that may be slightly different. But in terms of how they hand out the money, who gets money, those are specified by statute. There are priority categories. So to simplify somewhat, first priority is if you, the individual beneficiary, put money into it, you have a first claim on that money coming out. So before anybody else gets anything, you get all your money back. And then the big category is what's called PC3. So that's the third priority category. Those of you who have been in, quote, pay status, close quote, for at least 3 years. That means you are drawing benefits or are eligible to draw full benefits. Then whatever assets there are in that underfunded plan that was taken over by the PBGC have to be handed out to you. Now, we have to circle back and talk about that 5-year rule, okay? Because when the PBGC takes over a plan, ordinarily they take it over whatever the plan says is what the obligations are under the plan. But the PBGC did not fall off a turnip truck. And the folks in Washington said, well, you can't simply change the plan to make it more attractive and to vest a whole bunch of people in benefits in 5 years before it gets turned over to the PBGC. So the PBGC ignores any changes to that plan in the last 5 years. Now let's move on to health benefit protections, where the story is not actually quite so cheerful. If the company makes a contractual commitment to you and doesn't preserve the right to amend, modify, or terminate, that's a contractual obligation, and they owe that to you. Typically, outside bankruptcy, they don't reserve, if it's a vested benefit, they don't have the right to change it. The language of the Bankruptcy Code, there's a special statute which was lobbied in after the DB bankruptcy. Before the law was changed, the reality is that the people in this room are simply regarded as a cost in a bankruptcy. So other constituencies have a great deal of clout and some protections. The debtor in possession lender and the secured bondholders and the unsecured creditors committee and the existing workers and everyone else on the planet. So Congress passed section 1114 of the Bankruptcy Code to give special protection for what they defined as retiree benefits. And those are defined as health, prescription drug, life insurance type benefits. And it says any plan, fund, or program for retirees in a bankruptcy that's in those categories, before you modify, amend, or terminate, you actually have to go through a process. You have a committee of retirees appointed to represent the interests of retirees. They have to negotiate with that committee and provide it reasonable information. So if you are active in the process, chances are reasonable that you'll have a decent outcome. Let me talk briefly about the health coverage tax credit. If in any of these scenarios the PBGC ends up with your pension, then there is a little-known provision of the tax code called the health coverage tax credit, which says that if the PBGC ends up with your pension, and you are at least 55 but have not yet turned 65, and you are enrolled in qualifying coverage, then the federal government will now pay 80%, that was 80%, of your health care premiums on a monthly basis through the health coverage tax credit. Let me just sort of skip to the end here and talk about preparing for a possible bankruptcy. Number one, you have to organize, and thanks to your board up here, you're well along in that process. But I would encourage you to do everything that you can to get educated and to grow this organization. Prepare. I would suggest that you collect plan and benefit information and provide that to the NCRO, because in a bankruptcy, oftentimes, if you can find at least one group that has a contractual benefit, someone left the company under a specific early retirement package where they said, well, we will give you this health benefit, and for real, not amend, modify, or terminate, we're actually going to give you something, and they make a contractual commitment, it gives you a serious leg up both for the appointment of the committee and in your negotiations with the company, because the company's lawyers will stand there with their arms folded and say, well, we believe that amendable benefits are not covered by section 1114, and your attorney can say, well, you're wrong about that, and it doesn't matter because there are some actual contractual benefits here. I think you should go ahead and locate your resources in your own organization. I think you're well along, but for those of you who have special skills in public relations, law, benefits, get in touch with your organization and volunteer, because, frankly, you're fighting for a great group of people who are like you and who need the help. Raise a war chest to cover potential expenses. So in the event that there's bad news in a couple of days, I'm sure you'll hear from this organization that the time is now to open your wallets. Consider that a down payment on saving a much larger amount of money. And then if there is a bankruptcy filing, move early for the appointment of a retiree committee. I think people in a bankruptcy without an attorney are sort of like people who show up at a gunfight without a gun. It's just, the outcome is not good.